Hey everybody, Average Picker here. Not going to be a lockpicking video, even though we are sitting at the lockpick table. I've gotten a lot of messages from some of you and texts and a lot of questions and things just about the stuff that's going on here, right? Because Atlanta's kind of popped up in the national news again, where the police shot and killed a environmental protester who was in some woods, and they set some vehicles on fire downtown and things like that. So that's why I'm going to do this video. Try to clear up a little bit of this. I'm not going to give an opinion, riots, protests, who's wrong, who's right, or anything like that. I just want to kind of show you the layout of what's going on, because there's some confusion, it seems like, about what's what and what the whole deal is. So I'm just going to try to lay out everything as best to my knowledge. Okay, I do know those woods quite well. Some of you who have been watching for lockpicking for a while might remember, I think it was Starry Lock's birthday. He asked us all to go somewhere, and I went out to the library stones. That's in that area. So again, just going to take a kind of general look at it. My opinion on the whole thing is all of them can go to hell. I'm not a fan of how the city of Atlanta has handled this. I'm not a fan of how DeKalb County has handled any of this. I'm not a fan of how the police have handled any of this, and I'm certainly also not a fan of how the Defend Atlanta Forest Group has handled anything. As far as I'm concerned, and this is mostly just my opinion that I'll put into this video, all of them have basically robbed the land from the community. And the Defend Atlanta Forest kids, we had one, maybe 2 good years left, probably be able to use that park, and they've taken that away. They've robbed us of the last bit of time we could have used that for. And the Atlanta RC Club has pretty much collapsed because of their actions. And so as far as I'm concerned, they've also robbed us and robbed the RC Club of the use of their land, which they've been using. The Atlanta RC Club has been a minority, or mostly minority run club, I guess, since 1968. And this whole thing has just taken that away. Can't fly there anymore. Haven't been able to fly there for probably a year. It's just not safe. So anyway, that's the most I'm going to say about it. All of them can just go themselves as far as I'm concerned. But I got a map. We'll take a look at it, and I'll try to explain the situation and just why I think some people have some confusion about what's where, who's going on what. Okay, I do feel this quick need to pop back on and just prerequisite this again. Everything I'm going to tell you is to the best of my knowledge. It is, as far as I know, it's correct. There may be some minor details that I have a little off or wrong. There's some names I'm not really sure of who those players are, or anything like that. But yeah, there may be some discrepancies in what you hear or what the news reports or whatever. I don't know. I'm just going to tell it to you how I know it to be. And I'm going to do that in a best good faith effort to do so, and not to try to mislead or anything like that if I get something wrong. So that's how it is. Okay, so this is essentially, in this kind of weird triangle, the bit of land that is currently in question and dispute, having all the problems. So what I've done, you can obviously tell, I've kind of gone around the whole thing, the magic marker, so you can see the land. Now, it can be thought of as one big piece, but this is actually 2 separate pieces of land, right? And it's divided by Entrenchment Creek. I just realized I traced the road here, and I probably actually should have come around and traced this bit out, because I don't think this is part of the dispute, but it is sort of involved. Anyway, so this is what we're looking at, right? So the one side is called the prison farm, or the old prison farm side. That is the side that they're going to build the police training facility on, aka Cop City, right? The other side of the creek, this is Entrenchment Creek side. I think it's also been called like South River Trail, or there's a trail that runs through here called South River Trail, or just South Trail. Can't remember. But pretty much I know it is entrenchment, and everybody I generally know knows it is entrenchment. If I say, hey, I'll meet you at entrenchment, everybody kind of knows to go there. Okay, so this bit down here, this is the RC field. So this is where the Atlanta Remote Control Airplane Club is. They've got their little runway there and their big giant field. This is on the Entrenchment Creek side. The entrenchment side is technically a park, right? The Prison Farm side has never really been a park. It's always been kind of this gray area. The Entrenchment Creek side had, I guess I should say, a park designation to it, even though it wasn't very developed. So the RC Club, they were granted that land in the late 60s in perpetuity to use that part of the park for flying their RC planes. So that's what we're kind of looking at right there. Now, there's actually two separate issues going on here, right? So the old Prison Farm side, this is where they want to build Cop City. It's supposed to be about 85 acres. I'm not entirely sure which 85 acres it's going to be. There is a detention facility down here. My gut tells me it's going to be in and around here somewhere, because the police do have a shooting range down here already, and that'll come back up again in the conversation, right? So I'm figuring that 85 acres is in here. The Entrenchment Creek side has a whole separate issue going on, right? All right, how do we explain this? Okay, the Prison Farm side is, this whole thing is in DeKalb County. The Prison Farm is DeKalb County, but they lease it to the city of Atlanta. And it's one of those crazy leases. It's like $1 a year or something like that. It's kind of meaningless, right? So response-wise, you get Atlanta City Police responding to anything going on in the Prison Farm, which isn't a whole lot. I mean, there's been some homeless issues, I guess, the stuff there. There was a couple arson fires. This was all before all of this happened. But yeah, this is generally, technically it's considered property of the city of Atlanta. This entrenchment side is DeKalb County. Now, down the street off the map down here is Blackhall Studio. Blackhall Studio decided they wanted to expand their operations. And Blackhall is essentially, they lease warehouses, they lease film equipment. You know, if you need a studio to film in, you can lease it from Blackhall. Blackhall provides the material support, essentially. If you come over here and want to make a movie, that's kind of their go-to. And they want to basically build warehouses in here. But what happened was Blackhall Studio bought little bits of property. Let me see if I can mark those. I don't know if I got these entirely correct, but more or less, Blackhall Studio bought some property that's down along Constitution, and then they also bought some smaller plots that are kind of in here. I think they might have one here, not entirely sure. They get in here, and whether they knew from the start when they bought this or not, who knows. But this is all swamp. It's low land. It would be incredibly difficult to build anything on it. It's pretty much unusable. You can't walk through it. You'll quickly sink at least up to your ankles, if not your knees, especially if there's even been the slightest rain. It's unbuildable. So my understanding of what happened in the whole picture is the city started surveying the old Prison Farm to build the training facility and Cop City. And this would have been like 5-6 years ago, probably. This has been in the works for quite a while to build this area. Now, the way I was told the story, after they did this survey, and a surveyor decided to go through the creek area and kind of do some rough surveys in and around here. And he ended up somehow getting hooked up with Blackhall Studio, right? Because Blackhall Studio was running into this problem, was they couldn't build on their swampy, useless land that they had apparently purchased. And he ended up coming up or helping them develop this idea that they could do a land swap, right? So what Blackhall Studio wants to do is, or at this point in time, not this point in time, at the point in time this happened, was to take and give these bits of property and the stuff down here to DeKalb County. And then in return, DeKalb County would give them very roughly this swatch of property, right? So the idea being that all these little bits of property Blackhall Studio owned was roughly equivalent in acreage to this one big nice bit of property that you could actually do something and develop on, right? So that has become the land swap. So this land swap has gone around and around and around. There has been meetings on it. DeKalb County has also canceled a number of meetings. At one point they had 3 scheduled, and then they decided sort of arbitrarily at one of them, oh, we think we've heard enough opinions on this. We're not going to have any more meetings, which is kind of shady. And the whole thing, like, by the time we started hearing about it, it was almost too late. You know, like it was kind of almost a done deal. As resistance to the land swap grew, and we're not even into Defend Atlanta Forest people yet, right? This is all just local kind of surge some years ago. Blackhall Studios started making kind of deals with DeKalb County and saying, oh, we'll tell you what, we'll swap this land, but we'll put money into these schools and we'll help them develop film programs. You know, one that was mentioned, we'll put a water fountain in at this other park that's like way down the street, down here somewhere. You know, it was like, oh, really, you're bribing us with a water fountain? Like, put a water fountain in that park anyway, man. Like, come on, we're thirsty. We need water down there too. Yeah, so basically there was just a lot of little side deals that got connected to the land swap. Now, this is again my understanding of this. Those side deals were not put into any sort of contract with this swap. They were kind of done as separate little contracts, or not technically contracted or written down at all. They were just kind of vocally said, vocally supported, right? There was no actual promissory to do those things. Fast forward a little bit more. The owner of Blackhall Studios sells Blackhall Studios, right? So now we're all thinking, okay, so what's going to happen now? Well, it turns out the new studio owners, all those little promissory things about the water fountain and the school money and the film programs, all of that went off the table. They basically said that those contracts were made under a separate, you know, CEO. We're not going to honor those, but we still want to do the land swap. And DeKalb County said, okay, that's fine. However, the land swap properties are technically, as far as I can understand, still owned by the former owner of Blackhall Studios. So what it looks like is happening is he's going ahead with the swap. They don't have to honor any of the little side contracts. The swap will occur under his name, and then I guess essentially he will lease probably the land over to Blackhall, who can then come in and demolish it and build movie studios in this huge section. There is a paved trail that a lot of people use, and this is going to get completely rerouted, and I don't know why. It does have something to do with some of the property in here, but my understanding is it's going to kind of route down this way and come in closer to this neighborhood essentially before it crosses over. So that's what we're looking at. The prison farm side is the City of Atlanta Cop City plan. This has been in development and plans for a very, very long time. There was a group actually that's been kind of resisting and fighting up until last year or so, and they conduct tours and everything through here. They wanted to turn this area into a park. So I've seen some posts and reports coming out saying that this land was designated as a park and, you know, that's been taken away and it never got done. No, as far as this land has never been designated as a park. The hope from the community around it was it would get turned into a park, but it was never designated as one. The Entrenchment Creek side is the part that's been the park, and this is where the really sketchy land swap is occurring. Okay, so where does the local community kind of stand on it? I don't know anybody locally that supports the building of the training facility or Cop City. It's not that they're against building Cop City. The question is why here, right? DeKalb County has a lot of places they could potentially do this, and the general thing that keeps coming up is why do you have to build it here? If you remember, I mentioned earlier, there's a shooting range out there, and for 3 miles around, you can hear them out there already training and shooting, and it's just volley after volley after volley. And if your house and neighborhood backed onto that property, which a lot do, it's pretty constant noise. And so there's a lot of concern, like it's just going to make it worse. It's doubling down on that. So that's where most of that resistance is. It's not, we don't want a police training facility, we don't want to spend the money. It's why here? Like, build it somewhere else, build it out further away, where there's nothing, and there's not all these neighborhoods and stuff. There's also, then you find some resistance for the environmental impact for developing the land. That is on both sides, right? So as far as the land swap is concerned, there's also some environmental concerns about what that'll do to the area, and they're legitimate concerns. They've brought in groups, they've done environmental impact studies and looked at how the runoff and everything is going to, will happen, and just the destruction of, that much forest. And they're perfectly legitimate concerns, not something to be just easily dismissed. And then, of course, there is some crowd a little bit. At this point, you get probably a little further out from local community, and they're just against it in general. We don't need, that's not something we need to be putting the money into, whatever. And I'm not going to get into whether we need that or we don't need that or whatever. That's different. I honestly think the noise complaints and everything, those are really, really legitimate complaints. Okay, so I think for the length of time, we're going to leave it here. I'm going to come back in a day or so, or tonight, and we'll do a part 2, which will get up into more of the controversial stuff. I know this video has already run a little bit long, but at least this gives you a little bit of background understanding of the area, and then we'll move up into like 2022 and when all the problems really started and get up to, the present shooting and stuff like that occurred. Just trying to lay it out in a sensical way. I think it just requires a part 2 and a little bit of thought planning on how I'm going to, I guess, present it or give it to you so it makes sense and I'm not jumping back and forth, because that's real easy to do in cases like this. So anyway, hope that gives you a little something until part 2 comes out. Yeah, there we go. Y'all have a good one.